And now, back to Big D.
All right, welcome back to the Big D Show. Big D and Squeeze here in the studio with you Sunday. It's almost 6:30.
Yeah, it is.
Or right about there.
6:31.
No, that clock's wrong.
No, that clock's always
it's
wrong.
It's actually 6:29. And so, like I said, it's almost, but if we keep talking, it will be.
It'll be. Yeah, that's what's going to keep going at 6:30.
NWCZ Channel 1. And you just heard Fitta Wari with Jazz in Your Mouth and the Birds of Ontario before that, In My Mind. Brand new tracks, both of those, to NWCZ Radio this week. And we have a lot more coming up, including Connect 4. We're all going to play that in a bit. The hot tub set's coming up and lots of other things. But first, here in the old studio, we have our special guest, which we've been talking about. We talked about it last week, and we've been hyping it on Facebook and stuff. So hopefully you're tuned in, because I think it's a fascinating story. Dana Priyanka Hammond is in the studio with us. Dana, welcome.
Thank you so much.
It's great to have you. Tacoma girl, kind of.
Yes.
And so, you know, we're always in search of a local talent and people with a good story. And I'll tell you, one of the reasons I was attracted to your story is because while mine isn't similar to yours in a lot of ways, some ways it is. I was adopted as a kid, and about 3 years ago, I was reunited with my birth mother.
Wow.
And it was a long process. And there's, you know, lots of questions that go along with it. You know, is there going to be a big Oprah moment where everybody's happy, or do they not want to see you? And so, you know, so I felt a bit of a kinship with what you're working on now. But before we get to that, we need to get to the beginning of your story, which I find fascinating. Let's start with your story from the beginning.
Wow. Thank you, first of all, for letting me to be here on the radio station. And the beginning of my story is I just tell people about how I was just abducted at the age of 4 in India. Honestly, if you were to ask me, I could not remember anything prior to that.
So at 4, how do you know you're? So I'm just at 4. Is there like some records of it? Do you like? Because I mean, we're all pretty conscious at 4, but a lot of times you forget. But a major event you're going to remember, right?
Correct.
So do you remember anything? Do you recall anything from your home life? Did you have brothers, sisters hanging around? Were you going to school? Like, what was happening the day this all went down?
Honestly, that's the weird part, because nothing before that was traumatic. For it to stick to my head, I could not recall any of that. And I believe I would pretty much have to go through a journey of a hypnotism to
some regressive therapy or something.
Correct. To even get any kind of memory or recollection back, because sometimes we are creatures of habit, and we have a nature of hiding things in the back of our mind, and then when you get older, you don't remember anything.
Well, and sometimes when a traumatic event happens, such as what happened to you, things go blank. It's and pieces come at different times.
That's correct.
Do you remember actually being yanked out of your home, like the circumstances around it? Were you like walking out in the yard? Were you in the house? Was it people you knew? Do you remember any of that part of it?
Honestly, when I tell my story in my book that I co-authored with beautiful 17 women, I share that I don't remember that part. I only remember the traumatic part, and I can only imagine what took place for me to even get to the place of the rice sack. And I was, all I could remember was I opened my eyes up, and I was tired, extremely tired, which didn't make any sense. And I knew, I did not know at a young age, but as an adult, when you look back at it, and I'm like, oh my God, chloroform was placed over my mouth. And that has to be the reason why it was unrecognizable sleep. But I don't want to share too much because I want people to read the story.
Yeah, the name of the book is Tear the Veil. It's a bestseller. It's available on Amazon. Just Tear, Tear, Tear the Veil, Veil, and it's you and like 18 other authors who are telling their story about overcoming major obstacles in life.
Right.
I think it's all women, correct? It's all women with their stories.
That's correct. We all come together and we share our personal stories, what we have endured and what we have overcome. And then the whole point of that is because not everybody feel comfortable coming forth and telling their story. They're scared. And we have come forth to tell our story, to say, hey, this has taken place in our lives. But because we care about mental wellness and whatever traumatic situation is, you can overcome it. And hoping that other people will arise up and say, me too.
Mm-hmm. We're talking with Dana Priyanka Hammond. She has a website of the same name. It's all one word, Dana Priyanka. I'll spell that for you. It's Priyanka, and then Hammond with two M's, Hammond, Dana PriyankaHammond.com. All the information you need right there, how to get the book, about her mission. She has some really nice daily blogs and pictures of your beautiful daughter.
Thank you.
And is that your husband in one of the blogs where you're talking about doing daily devotions? That is him.
Yes.
Okay, I wasn't sure if it was just a stock photo of, like, this is some guy doing devotions. But it is. Okay, so at what point then, so you've been abducted, you find yourself waking up from this nightmare of being in a rice sack. Are you still in India at this point? Like, when did you realize something is super amiss here, and I'm not sure what my future holds?
At that time.
So where were you at a police station? Were you
No.
were you in the captor's lair, or what? How did that happen?
Actually, I was in a burlap bag.
Mm-hmm.
I was in a rice sack, and a man was carrying me behind, like a sack of potatoes on his back.
So he's walking with you in the back. Are you here? Do you know where you're headed? Is he talking? Like, it's just all a mystery?
Everything was a mystery.
So how do you get out of this situation?
I finally arrived at a train station in Pune, India. And that's when it was all but God. I can't explain what took place. And I want to say this to the people. Child trafficking does not necessarily mean sex trafficking.
Oh, absolutely not.
Because
it could be for work.
Labor trafficking,
absolutely.
correct.
It can be for anything.
And organ trafficking. And I'm not sure if people understand this. It's also adoption trafficking. And people are unaware that orphanages are not saving angels, quote unquote, like they should be. They say they're for children. They're here to rescue children. But honestly, if you really knew about their background, they're not. And a lot of the adoptees, they are actually sold $10,000 a piece to another country.
Oh, yeah.
And
adoption's not cheap. If
it's
anybody's
not cheap.
ever looked into it, it is not a cheap. It's a good enterprise for those who are involved in it, but if you're paying out, it's not cheap.
Right, and there's a reason why, and because human beings are the most easiest way to sell than compared to drugs or guns and weapons, and it's the safest way.
So, do you think? Well, I'll get back into that. But so now you're caught up? Are you in an adoption agency now? Like, so you get adopted by who?
I get adopted by American people in Iowa, but I actually I believe wholeheartedly that I was adoption trafficked, but that is yet to be found out. So everything's a mystery, but I know in my heart it has to be adoption trafficking. That's why I said I was child trafficked. I know that for sure. I've
Do you
been
know
child
who the
trafficked.
agency is, like where you were
Yes.
adopted from? Like,
Yes.
oh,
Yes.
you do.
Yes.
And so your adoptive parents who are in Iowa, they adopt you. I assume you fly over to the States at some point.
Correct.
And doesn't go so well, right?
Correct. Correct.
See, I was adopted too, and my dad was great, but my mom sounded a lot like yours. She was a nut. You know, which is weird because I don't know about you, but as an adopted child, there's a lot of timelines involved, right? And
Yes.
so there are people who are on a waiting list for a child, and depending upon when you're born, like
Right.
next one up, right?
Right.
So I always wonder, and I know it'll never happen, but I always wonder, like the family that was before and the family right after where I was adopted, what happened to those kids? Like, what
Right.
was their life like? What were those people like? Like I said, my dad was great, and but my mom, she was a bit on the nutty side. Well,
Right.
quite a bit, but we all overcome, right?
Right.
We go through life. So you're in Iowa, and then you grow up there.
Right. I do.
Do they adopt other kids? Are you a single? Are you an only child?
They had two grown sons in their 30s. One
Oh,
was in
wow.
their 30s.
And they let them adopt a young child, huh? Mm-hmm. Wow.
Honestly, I don't know my real birthday. And so when I arrived at the orphanage, what they do is they take a group of kids and they say, okay, well, do a pretty good guess from even after doctor's report. And they say, okay, well, I'm going to take a group of you and your birthday is this. They just
assign you one.
they just sign you one.
So what did they give you?
November.
Too close to Christmas, man. Like you should have, go back and try to change that. Like if you could go back as a kid, because mine fortunately was June 1st, so like it was midway through the year. So you get all the holidays, you get stuff, and then way in June you get stuff. But
Right.
I always feel bad for everybody who's like close to Christmas because they just double up on stuff.
Right. Yeah, I mean, it's just, but birthdays were never celebrated for me, so.
Really?
Yeah, because of.
Was this like explain your adoptive parents? Just you don't have to give names or any like super major details, but
Right.
what was the deal at home? Like what was so I'll just say disconcerting for you? Were they strict, like overly strict? Were they possessive? Were they demeaning? Were they abusive?
They were, I will say this, they were abusive, and it was not just abuse, it was
Like physical abuse?
both. It was physical abuse, emotional abuse, mental abuse, and that just really tormented and broke down as an innocent child. It broke me down.
Sure.
And it was a very crucial and traumatic experience that I went through that carried throughout my life as an adult. So now, as an adult, I'm responsible for me.
Sure.
And mental wellness is my responsibility. Because that's something that I didn't want to carry through with my newborn child. And for her to have a better life that I did not have.
Oh, it affects every aspect of your life growing
Absolutely.
up. Your dating, your view of the world, your jobs. It affects everything. It's brutal. We're talking with Dana Priyanka Hammond. You can check her out at danapriyankahammond.com. She is one of the authors of a book titled Tear the Veil, which is available on Amazon. You're also a pretty decent chef, huh?
Yes.
Got some Facebook lessons going on and a couple of cookbooks out there.
I have one. It's a small Indian cookbook. And that was the first thing that I published.
Were your parents in the States, were they Indian?
They were not.
Okay.
My
So
first
you-
adoptive parents were not.
So at some point you had to embrace that culture.
I did.
Because you probably, in Iowa, I can't imagine you're growing up with a lot of like curry and, lots of, I don't know, whatever Indian food, masala and all that. So it's not happening, right?
Matter of fact, it was so boring there. I hated Iowa so much.
It's the
Middle
Midwest.
America.
We expect.
Yeah, it's Middle America, man.
Actually, that came later down the road. I am actually releasing the rest of my story this year. It's in the publisher's hand.
Good.
And that is the part that I share. Even though I shared a chapter with my fearless visionary sisters, Tear the Veil, and just a chapter of, and I take you through the journey of being child trafficked, what it was like, how it felt. I just literally carry you through my journey, and then, but. A chapter is just a chapter. It's 20 to 30 pages long,
Right.
and that's it.
Yeah,
and
it's pretty quick.
It's pretty quick. So, but I don't leave you empty-handed. But I do show you, hey, there's rest to come,
Right.
and that's the rest to come. That's already in the publisher's hand right now, where I'm sharing about me going through another adoption. Growing up foster system, shelter system, and what that was like for me, and all the way through 20 years old. So I take you on that journey.
Well, when you got out of Iowa and you got out of under the clutches of your, I'll just say, abusive adoptive parents, how did you find yourself in the Northwest? We're a little ways away.
Yeah. I actually love Seattle. I've been here ever since then. I got adopted again at the age of 17.
Really?
Yes.
That's unusual.
Yeah.
It really is, because usually, if you're in foster care and you hit a certain age, you're basically on your own. I mean, you might have some safety nets around you, but getting actually adopted by somebody. I think the oldest person I remember being adopted I was in high school. And I think there was a guy who was like 15 or 16 that got adopted by a family, and that was pretty unusual then. So how did that come about?
Well, it took some time after when I share with people in my chapter when how I go through my narcissistic relationship with my it was a narcissistic abuse, the abuse that I endure with my first adopted mom, and how I come out of it. Then
She was narcissistic.
she was narcissistic.
It is and my adoptive mom is like the queen of narcissism.
Oof,
It's hard to deal with, isn't it?
it is.
It's amazing. I don't think a lot of people, unless you've run into a really true narcissist, you don't realize the impact it can have on you.
You don't because it's pretty traumatic, and that's why I'm here to voice out. There's nothing wrong with when you go through that, and there's nothing wrong with seeing a psychiatrist. It's actually to benefit you, especially for your mental health.
Raise my hand. I've spent thousands of dollars in therapy.
Yeah, yeah, and if you have to take Prozac, go ahead and take Prozac to calm your nerves down, because it's there to help you to be normal when everything growing up wasn't normal and it was haywire. And
Well, you don't
that's
know
how
what
it
normal
was.
is.
You don't know what normal is.
You have to
yeah.
figure it out on your own, and
Yeah.
then and is there really a normal? That's the big question. Like, what is
Right.
normal?
Right.
Because I think everybody's got something going on, but
Right.
But just to be in the general norm, you don't even know what that means.
Right. And it's even when you go through abuse at home like I did, I didn't just go through abuse there. I had to deal with racism at school. I had to deal with, the American man's world of materialistic.
Materialism.
Yeah, materialism. And that was difficult for me because I didn't look like them. I didn't act like them.
Yeah, being in Iowa, I can't imagine there's a big Indian culture there.
No,
So
Racism.
So you kind of stuck out a little bit.
I did. Like,
Yeah.
a
Was it like out on the farmland too, or were you in like Des Moines or like a metropolitan area, or
I
more
was in a
urban, suburban?
Oh, it was a farmland area.
Okay, I mean
Yeah.
you don't have to name it.
Yeah.
I know Iowa.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought? And you don't have to answer this question, but being in my own journey of trying to find my birth parents, I did find out who my birth dad was, but he had already passed on. In your situation where you were obviously taken from your home,
Right.
has it ever the thought ever crossed your mind that they were perhaps involved in it?
No.
No?
No.
Like,
There's, you know what, I want to pinpoint out, there's certain things that you just know. I don't know how, you just know. Like, you know your age, how old you were when something took place.
sure.
And it is in my document, even though the orphanage is limiting the information when they should not be. You know, they're
well, it's fair,
withholding.
those are tight records.
Right.
It took me years.
And there's a reason why. And like I said, they're not saving angels, and there is such thing called adoption trafficking. And I'm actually working with a program right now who talks about adoption trafficking and how a lot of adoptees are adoption trafficked, and a lot of the adoptees don't even understand they've actually been adoption trafficked. And I'm not saying all, because it did not happen to all of them.
No,
I'm
that's
saying to
absolutely
few,
not.
because there's actually a documentary also out there on Netflix that mentioned about it, and it or is it Amazon? One of those two. I saw it, and I'm like, oh my God, that's my story. And these companies actually, they hire people to just take kids from the street, or when the parents turn their back, just take them. Just under the
Have you
nose,
ever
just
thought
take 'em.
about the DNA route? Have you ever done the DNA test? They haven't registered anything.
They have not registered anything. I actually do have a couple of DNA
Matches.
I went on. I don't have any matches yet. It's the crazy part is I found out that a lot of Indians don't do DNAs.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
It's not a common practice.
Sure.
It has to be introduced, and you have to get them interested. And the program that I'm working with, they're planning on purchasing a whole bunch of, once they get the donated money, purchasing a whole bunch of DNA testings. So for people like me who they do help out to find their birth family in India, they're actually in India, then they can do the DNA on them and see if it's a match. So they have access to things like they can.
It's an amazing tool.
Yeah.
It really is. But
Yeah.
and obviously, other people have to have tested and registered it for it to work. But it is an amazing tool. Before we're talking with Dana Priyanka Hammond, and you can check her out at danapriyankahammond.com. All the information's right there. And she has a book that she's a part of, and you can get that on Amazon. It's titled Tear the Veil. And she's on Facebook, and also she's on GoFundMe, and we're going to talk about that right now. So, but before we get into the GoFundMe and all the details on that, have you thought, or what in your mind's eye, what is the hope for you, and what do you think the reunion would be like? Like, do you envision that where you finally find your parent, or a sibling, or an aunt, or an uncle? Like I said, we don't know who's alive or not, right? I mean,
Right.
that was my thing. I don't know if anybody was even around.
Right.
Because I call it the Oprah moment. Yeah, everybody thinks it's going to be this Oprah moment where everybody's all hugs and la-di-da and tears flowing. But I've also read several accounts of where adoptees got in touch with their birth parents and it got rejected again, which is like a devastating blow. What are your goals? What are your hopes? What are your thoughts on, if and when you finally, there's that moment of, there they are.
I don't have high expectation, first of all. But I feel like I've gone through so much enough to even put myself in a higher level and think that everything's going to turn out peachy cream when it's not. You just have to go with it and figure out where your identity came from. And that's my whole main goal anyways.
Find your story.
To find my story, to find where I actually came from, whether it works out or not.
Right, because I know even like, so you have a beautiful daughter.
Yeah.
And I imagine when you were going through all the tests and everything, I'm pregnant and I'm going to have this, and the doctor says, well, what's your family medical history? You have no idea.
No.
And I went through that as well. I mean, a couple of times where it was like, you know what, I don't know. I don't know if we die early. I don't know if we all have heart attacks,
Right.
or, you know, like I didn't know nothing. So, you know, there are going to be pieces to this puzzle that are going to get locked into place, and then, you know, hopefully it all comes together, but there may be some holes here and there that might never get filled. But the closer you can get to the fuller picture creates a you.
Right. And that's the whole point of sharing my story with all of us fearless visionary sisters, because it's about how I was lost in my identity, and now as an adult, I'm here to find my identity and to be secure. I'm more secure now than I used to be as a young child, as a young adult. I mean, oh my God, it took forever. And identity is very, very important, which actually stabilizes a human being. And honestly, I'm just in a search so I can recognize my place and just show my strength and where I came from, not because it's to break me down or make me fragile, but it's all about identity, identifying myself, seeing where I came from and where I belong. And if it becomes a happy ending story,
Bonus.
it's a bonus,
Right.
Yeah.
Well, tell us real quickly about the GoFundMe page and how people can help you, because this is like the beginning of your journey. You've come to grips with the story.
Right.
You put it to print. You're getting the word out there. Now you have a second book coming out about the rest of it, and now the real, like, the actual leg journey is beginning. You're wanting to go over there.
Yes.
And, you know, track down relatives, your birthplace, hopefully your parents, anything so tell us about the GoFundMe.
You can actually Google my name, Dana Priyanka Hammond. I am searchable. And
Yes, you are.
So you must have done
I've
your
done
job.
it. Yeah.
I am actually marketing myself on Google. So I've actually, I'm having a profile being created. And the whole point of GoFundMe is to raise funds for my cause. And the cause is to get me to India, get me and my family to India, so I can go on the news media, start my first steps with the program that I've connected myself to. They are actually representing me, and they've started the legwork of going to the court systems and the orphanage to see if they can build up my case and get more information that I wasn't able to give to them. And so that way, when I go on the news media, I can actually share, hey, I'm that missing person. I'm looking for my birth family. I would like to be reunited. That's just the beginning. And I'm raising funds to not just to go to India, but also to start a documentary film. So I want to hire somebody to go with me, to follow the journey with me, so I can share to the whole world my journey and the outcome of it. And so that is the whole purpose of the GoFundMe, to raise funds, to do a documentary film, to get me to India, get all the legwork going. And I've already started, by the way. When I started hiring them, they are officially my power of attorney. So they're representing me in India since they live there. The program is in India. And they are, they're in works of going to the police station and representing me and saying what took place in my life, how they found me, and who is this cop that they do mention.
Yeah, it should be in a record somewhere, you would
It
hope.
is. It
Okay,
is.
good.
It is. And even that missing persons newspaper clip, they're going to be finding that too. So it's going to be very interesting journey for
It'd be
me.
fascinating. Absolutely fascinating. Other ways that you can support Dana is by purchasing her book or her books when the new one comes out, and promote her cause on your social media, and follow her on social media, and just generally be involved. Check her out, occasionally check in, see how things are going. And if you have a similar story, share it with her. I'm sure she'd be glad to talk to you about it. And mostly you can go over to the GoFundMe page and donate and help her with this cause. Dana Priyanka Hammond's been our guest. Dana, thank you so much for coming in.
Thank you.
It's a fascinating story, and I really hope the best for you.
Thank you.
Really hope all the things you're looking for come to fruition.
Yes.
And that again, I wasn't abducted, but I do know a lot about adoption and searching for your parents, and it's a grind.
Yes,
And
it
there's
is.
lots of ups and downs. I mean, I'll tell you a quick story. My wife was she's the DNA queen, and I call it the Dead Sea Scrolls. She would put them all out, and we had what we believed were narrowed down to 5 individuals that were my father.
Mm-hmm.
So I took over from there, and I found them all, and I called them, and it ended up being none of them.
Wow.
And I mean, one guy was really angry that I called him, and what is this stuff, and blah 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 blah. And it made me think, like, what if I got a call like that out of the blue, right? So I sort of, I had to back down a little bit, but it ended up well for me, and I hope it ends up well for you as in the long
Thank
run.
you.
I hope it really, really solidifies. One last question in all of this, because that's an incredible journey, and it's not over. You're like midway through it. This is a marathon.
Yes.
What is it that inside you that allowed you to overcome this, to deal with this, therapy helps, and sometimes if you have to take a medication, that helps. But there's usually some core thing in a person that allows them to overcome. What's that been for you?
Not giving up. It's been fire, fervency. And I think because of the zeal that's in my life, it doesn't allow me to stop. And because of that, I have found my purpose. And the purpose is to put out there about the awareness of child trafficking. Yes, I went through child trafficking. Yes, I got rescued. But I feel like I am a voice for those who have not been rescued, for the ones who are lost, who feel like they're hopeless, who feel like they cannot rise above the storm. But I feel like if I made it, they can make it too. That not all is lost. They can find themselves. They can find themselves. And that is my whole purpose. It's about healing. It's about healing because you actually have to take it one bite at a time. You're not just going to overnight like that, get your healing, but you have to walk it out. You got to know there's purpose for you. There's healing for you. And that if anything, that God has his best interest for you.
Dana Priyanka Hammond couldn't have said it better. That's DanaPriyankaHammond.com. Thanks so much for coming in. We're going to get back to the music, back to the big program. Squeeze, you ready?
Can I mention one more thing?
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
Also, I want to give out a shout out to my Fearless Visionary Sisters because without them, our book wouldn't have made it to officially now Walmart and Target. We are also on Apple Store, Barnes & Noble, so you can find us everywhere. And I have a great group of ladies, strong, personable. We all went through a personal story and that we rose above from. Let me mention, one of them went through gang rape. Mine was being abducted on foreign land, but then there's other women like just, being bullied, abused. It's somewhere in the line we can relate, and that's what I wanted to mention. And there's somewhere in the line that that people can relate to with us. And if it's not my story, it's their story. And so this is why these books are the best books to purchase. So because you can see how they rose above, and you can rise above the storm too.
Yeah, Tear the Veil is the name of the book. It's on Amazon, and obviously now we're finding out in Walmart. And where else was that?
Target.
So go check it out. Buy yourself a copy. This is Lowrider and Red River on the Big D and Squeeze Show.